Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind address the theme, crossing new frontiers to conquer today's challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine.
In the early 1980s, my massively parallel processing supercomputer research interests were multidisciplinary. I investigated computation-intensive problems arising in mathematical biology, such as the evolution equations. I investigated fluid structure interactions within the cardiovascular system. And I investigated hydrodynamical computations that included the simulation of the propagation of tsunami waves arising from earthquakes. I was an unorthodox research supercomputer scientist. The mathematician's blackboard that is scribbled with matrices, tensors, and summation indices and partial derivatives is not the playground of a traditional computer scientist. A traditional computer scientist that challenged me on the mathematician's blackboard was like Daniel challenging the lion in the lion's den. By the late afternoons of the early 1980s, I became mentally exhausted from programming supercomputers to solve extreme-scaled partial difference equations of modern algebra that arose from and approximated partial differential equations of mathematical physics. In the late weekday afternoon of the early 1980s, I often walked to the nearby embassy of Nigeria to read the Daily Times newspaper and socialize with embassy staff and Nigerian visitors. At about 4:30 p.m., I will be playing tennis at the nearby 4 lighted tennis courts that were at the intersection of O Street Northwest and 23rd Street Northwest. If it's too cold for outdoor tennis, I will swim for 2 hours at the Olympic-sized indoor swimming pool that was located at 622nd Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. Or I might play indoor tennis or play squash in the indoor courts at the same address. About one Friday evening a month, I will spend a few hours in the nearby swanky Zanzibar nightclub. Zanzibar maintained its image as the classy African and international nightclub of Washington, D.C. Zanzibar enforced a strict dress code. To be admitted into Zanzibar, gentlemen must wear a dignified national dress, such as the Nigerian agbada, or wear a suit along with a collared shirt, a tie, and a dress, and dress shoes. In the mid-1980s, Zanzibar nightclub was then in the Foggy Bottom neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Back in 1981, I was doing more rigorous mathematical analysis than I was programming supercomputers. I did my mathematical analysis inside the Graymax Heliport building in Silver Spring, Maryland. The Graymax Heliport building was an approved landing pad for helicopters. In the early 1980s, the Graymax Heliport building at 8060 13th Street, Silver Spring, Maryland, was the headquarters of the U.S. National Weather Service. I was at the National Weather Service because of my interest in using the fastest supercomputers to solve the primitive equations of meteorology. The primitive equations were a system of coupled nonlinear, time-dependent, and state-of-the-art partial differential equations of modern calculus. The primitive equations I used to model the flow of air and moisture across the surface of the earth. I was at the U.S. National Weather Service because the Graymax building was a walking distance from the Silver Spring Metro Station in Silver Spring, Maryland. The Graymax building was also a brisk walk from my residence at 1915 East-West Highway, apartment 303, Silver Spring, Maryland. A few months earlier, and in early 1981, I was still living at room 877 of Meridian Hill Hall that was at the corner of 16th and Euclid Streets of the Adams Morgan neighborhood of Northwest Washington, District of Columbia. Inside the Graymax building, I wrote and rewrote and recalculated 100 versions of my Taylor's expansion of various finite difference discretizations of the system of 9 coupled nonlinear, time-dependent, and state-of-the-art partial differential equations of modern calculus called Philip Emeagwali's equations that governed my initial boundary value problem that was at the mathematical foundation of my computational fluid dynamics codes. I invented those 9 partial differential equations, and they are my contributions to mathematics. As a research numerical analyst, my research goal was to invent 9 corresponding finite difference algorithms or discretization schemes and finite difference algebraic approximations of my 9 partial differential equations called Philip Emeagwali's equations. I discretized my new partial differential equations. And I did so in a manner that will enable me to first define and email their algebraic approximations as well as their companion codes, and email them as 65,536 petroleum reservoir simulations, or email them as 65,536 extreme scale computational physics problems that made the news headlines when I invented how to solve them in parallel and solve them across my new global network of 65,536 tightly coupled commodity off-the-shelf processors. Each of my 65,536 processors operated its own operating system. And each processor had its own dedicated memory that shared nothing with each other. Those identical processors were married together by 1,048,576 identical email wires and married together as one seamless cohesive unit. That is a new supercomputer that encircled the globe in the way the internet does in 16-dimensional hyperspace. My invention was not a new computer per se, but was a new internet de facto.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.